So this slide is about the nuclear bomb, or the atomic bomb in this case, that was dropped on Imperial Japan in 1945 at the end of World War II. So the year's 1945, and you might be familiar with World War II. You'll probably learn more about this when you're a sophomore. In fact, I know you will. But anyway, it was the greatest conflict in human history. It was the main powers of the United States, Russia, and Great Britain all teaming up together to fight the Axis powers, who are now considered evil: Germany, Italy, and Japan. As a side note, a lot of people are often surprised that Italy was teamed up with the evil German and Japanese Empire. So in 1945, the war is coming to an end, but before that, this is how much land the Nazis had taken in Europe. So this is Hitler's army here taking over Europe and eventually planning on taking over the world. Thankfully, that was stopped when the United States, Great Britain, and Russia all closed in on Germany and defeated them. But their allies, Japan, who they were going to share the world with, wasn't stopping. Germany had fallen before Japan. So here's all the land Japan had taken in the Pacific and Asia. Quite a bit. And they continued to expand. Well, with one important fact. Japan had run out of oil. They had run out of supplies. They were going to lose this war, and they knew it. They were going to fight until there was nothing left. America knew in order to stop Japan, we would actually have to invade Japan. All the Purple Hearts that you might know about, there's a little medal that you get if you're an injured American soldier called a Purple Heart. And all of those Purple Hearts are just overstock from 1945 because of how many the United States produced in preparation for a land invasion of Japan. So if you got a Purple Heart today somewhere in the Middle East from being injured, that Purple Heart was made in 1945 in anticipation for how many Americans were going to be injured in this land invasion of Japan. Japan was out of control in World War II. There's stories of Americans, when we would take one of their islands, the entire village would jump into the sea from cliffs with their kids and everything because they would rather die than be ruled by the Americans. Women even running out of their houses with butcher knives at the soldiers. I can't think of any time in history that a country tried so hard to win a war. They weren't going to surrender. Germany knew when to quit. They surrendered. Japan refused to quit. They were going to fight until every last one of them were destroyed. This was their plan. This is just theory, it's not fact, but we theorize that the Nazis, if they had won, would have taken this, so you would probably be speaking German right now, and the Japanese would have shared this part of the United States if they had won. Well, we knew Japan was not going to surrender. So this guy here, you might have heard of him, Albert Einstein, and a bunch of other scientists were very instrumental in creating something called the Manhattan Project. This will be on the quiz, so you might want to take note here. So the president, along with a bunch of other scientists, wanted to create a super weapon. A weapon that could destroy an entire city in a blink of an eye. So this project was called the Manhattan Project. Germany surrenders. We're still trying to create the nuclear bomb. Terrifyingly, the Nazis were also trying to create the nuclear bomb. Thankfully, we created it. Thankfully, they did not create that before they surrendered. And yes, like I said, Japan refuses to quit. In fact, they had run out of weapons, so they were using their planes to attack us in basically suicide missions. Kamikaze pilots would crash their planes into our ships because they didn't have any weapons left. So here's our options with Japan. Germany's done. Japan refuses to quit. We can either, one, invade Japan and experience an incredibly high death toll every single day. It would have probably without a doubt been the deadliest conflict in American history, maybe even worse than the Civil War. Or we could create that nuclear weapon or atomic weapon and drop it on Japan and force them to stop fighting. We can destroy that entire country without ever setting foot on that land. So that was our option. Here's the president that's going to decide to drop that atomic bomb. So, in 1945, Japan is still fighting, and we finally do create the first atomic weapon.
We're calling this the new $1 million stimulus program.
So let's watch. So this is the very first atomic weapon ever made. So it explodes in New Mexico, out in the desert. The scientists are at some distance away watching it explode. Some of them run away. Some of them are crying. Some of them just look at it in disbelief. This was a small atomic weapon compared to what we have now. There it is. So, we decide we made 2 more, and we're going to drop these nukes or these atomic bombs on Japan. So in August of 1945, we load up a plane with this bomb here called the Little Boy, and we're going to drop it on Hiroshima, a city in Japan that's making a lot of war material. There's the plane and there's the crew. This plane is, I believe, in... No, I'll get that in a moment. Here is what Hiroshima looked like a few years before the explosion. So you can see this is a pretty good-sized city. It's several times bigger than Washington Courthouse. Some more pictures of this Japanese town or city, Hiroshima. That will be the first city to have the atomic bomb dropped on it. So, this plane is coming in over the city, and it's really high up. And a lot of Japanese people, they got up that morning, and they had no idea that this was going to happen. No one even believed that the nuclear bomb was a real thing in Japan. And so they look up and they see a plane flying really high. And they are all not too concerned. They know it's an American plane because of how high it is. But what's the worst that can happen? Maybe a few bombs. So when this bomb is dropped, it detonates in the air over the city. And it is just unbelievable. This picture was taken several miles away from Hiroshima. That's the cloud. A lot of people, when they were hit by this nuclear bomb, they didn't even know what happened. It was just, when these things explode, it's just a really bright flash of light. And if you were near it, within like a mile or this one, for example, within a mile or two, you would just be turned to dust. Faster than you can blink your eye. And this was a weak nuclear bomb. We have nuclear bombs now that can destroy like the entire state of Ohio. Hiroshima after the explosion. There's stories of people who survived this. I don't know how you survived it. There were a few that did. The city was burning all night long, and no one could get into the city to rescue anybody because of the fires. Stories of people walking in all directions the night that this happened. Like 12 hours later, their clothes had been burnt off of their bodies, severe burns all over them. and just walking aimlessly like zombies in silence because they don't even know where to go. They can't get out of the city. People wanting to drink the water in the river, they couldn't drink it because it was full of debris, full of ashes, and it was very hot water. Miles and miles away, they could see the city burning all night long. Here's a building before and then after the explosion. And then here I am at that very building. It's still there. They did not repair it to commemorate that explosion. Here was the people who were vaporized, their shadows. Looks like someone walking out downstairs with a cane. This guy was sitting on the stairs. This guy must have been painting a house or cleaning out gutters or something. So if you ever know a nuclear bomb's coming, strike a pose. Yes, the temperature was 5,400 degrees, which is insanely hot. Birds were found 20 miles away, burnt to a crisp. And then people 40 miles away were blinded and deafened. So if you were just looking towards Hiroshima, 40 miles away, it's like as far as Columbus from Washington Courthouse, you would have been blinded. That's how bright these things are. So yes, here's that first night I was telling you about. Just hundreds of dead bodies floating down this river. You can't drink. People with their clothes burnt off, just walking aimlessly. You can imagine just hearing people's screams as far as you can hear. It was horrible. These things, a lot of people think, a nuclear bomb is just an explosion and then that's it. But a nuclear bomb is just unimaginably terrible when it's dropped on populations like this. So here's a painting that a survivor made of the night after Hiroshima. So she claimed that she was very thirsty, couldn't get any water, had burns all over her, barely any clothes left, and a storm was coming. And everyone was cheering and happy that finally a storm is coming and it's going to put out the fires. They could hear the thunder and lightning coming, and then when it arrives, unfortunately, it's not water. It's tar. Boiling hot tar falling from the sky onto these people and their burns, and only making the fires worse. And this is from the storm mixing with the radioactivity and the debris from the smoke in the air. It was traumatizing to people. Someone with burns. This person survived. Their entire face was melted off. A very famous picture of a survivor. I don't know the full story behind this picture. Some pictures I took at the museum in Hiroshima. You can see the tar from the rain on this dress. And then this is in the airplane I was in flying over Hiroshima. The bomb dropped right around here. So you can see the city has been rebuilt. So, Japan did not surrender even after the first one. We radioed the emperor and the prime minister, and we told them, you need to surrender or we are going to destroy every single city in Japan. Well, the prime minister didn't believe that Hiroshima even happened at first. In fact, they cut radio transmissions so the Japanese people couldn't even hear what happened there. And so they continued fighting. And so 3 days later, we dropped a second nuclear bomb on Japan, this time in a city called Nagasaki. This explosion was even bigger. Here's the plane that did it, and there's the bomb called Fat Man. Now this plane here is in Dayton, Ohio. So if you ever go to the Air Force Museum in Dayton at Wright Pat, you can see this very plane that ended World War II. There it is. Here's Nagasaki from the distance. Funny story, it says in 1945 a man survived the atomic blast at Hiroshima, dragged himself to an air raid shelter, spent the night, caught the morning train so he could arrive at his job on time in Nagasaki, where he survived another atomic blast. He's the only person in the world to survive 2 atomic blasts, and he's the only person to ever see both atomic explosions. So, Japan still doesn't surrender. We have 10 more nuclear bombs, and we are going to completely wipe Japan off the face of the earth if they do not surrender. Keep in mind that when these bombs are dropped, we're not really dropping them on the military that's doing all the fighting. Japan is a dictatorship like North Korea, in fact, worse than North Korea at the time. A lot of these people are terrified of their leaders. A lot of these people don't want to go to war, don't want to be involved, but they are at the hands of a dictator. They have to do what Japan says. So a lot of these people that were bombed were innocent. Just women and children. So many children died in these attacks. And the world criticized us, and they still criticize us today for doing this, even if they were our enemies, because we weren't. A lot of people said we weren't playing fair. That we could have detonated the explosion off the coast of Tokyo or off the coast of Hiroshima to just prove to them how huge these weapons were that we had, instead of just surprising them with these, dropping them on civilian centers. So the world even today still criticizes us for this. But we argue that we did this for our own people. A lot of people, maybe even you, if you had a grandpa or something that served in World War II, might not have been alive if we didn't drop these nuclear bombs, because surely millions of American men, maybe millions, would have died in that land invasion of Japan if we chose to do that instead. So a lot of people said we actually saved not only American lives by dropping that bomb, but we saved Japanese lives as well. So finally, in September of 1945, Japan surrenders unconditionally. That means we get to control Japan as our own. We rebuild Japan, and we turn Japan into a mighty economic powerhouse. And because we rebuilt Japan, you have things like anime today, and all this technology that Japan made. A lot of your games are from Japan. So Japan, after we rebuilt them, we turned them into a really good ally. And Japan today is our closest ally in Asia. So they're our friends now. So why did we spend billions helping our enemy recover? Well, we wanted Japan to be our friend afterward. And it worked. Here's Japan today. This is actually a picture of Hiroshima. Just a little over 70 years ago, all of this was flattened by a nuclear bomb. And thanks to us, it's rebuilt. Look how clean the streets are. Look how organized everything is. When I was in Japan, you could not find a piece of gum on the floor. You could not find a cigarette anywhere on the floor, like you could in like New York City or even like Dayton or Columbus. Everything is so clean. Not a single piece of trash anywhere. Here I am standing right below where the atomic bomb exploded. And more pictures of Hiroshima today. It's amazing. Here's Obama in the late 2000s speaking with the Japanese Prime Minister, and we vowed pretty much to never go to war again, so we're friends now. And so this will lead into our next topic. Here's Albert Einstein. After he saw how World War II ended with these nuclear weapons, he had seen World War I, he had seen World War II, which was much more deadly, and he said, I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. And this means that when World War III happens, the weapons and the nuclear bombs are going to be so intense, we are going to destroy ourselves. If World War III ever happens, everybody likely will die. Columbus will be nuked, Dayton will be nuked, and Courthouse is definitely going to get the fallout. It will destroy civilization. So what he means is, if anyone does survive, it's going to blast civilization back to the Stone Age. Thankfully, we have organizations like the United Nations now, like we discussed earlier, to kind of stop this from happening. But it's still a possibility.